The 50 people who regularly visit the cinema were asked which four types of film they preferred. So we've got comedy, adventure, science fiction, and romantic. Okay, and here are the results that we got from the 50 people. Okay, now we can use this here frequency table it says for us to complete. We can fill this in here to actually then record how many choose comedy, adventure, science fiction, romantic. We could then use this data, then we could represent it on a bar chart or a pie chart. In this case, we're going to do it on a bar chart to represent each of these categories. Okay, so first thing, we're going to sort of count how many of each type there are. Okay, and we can use a tally to help us record our counting so we don't go wrong. Okay, so I'd go through this top row here and we can see comedy once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. Okay, so I'm going to have 4 tally marks there. Okay, if I go along the next row, I've got comedy there, right? So I'll cross that off, and just to show you that here then, of course, when you get your 5th comedy, you do a diagonal then, so then we've got a group of 5 there, and we've got then 1, 2 more there. The next row, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 comedy there, right? So there'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, so they're included. 4th row, we've got then 1, 2, 3, so 1, 2, 3, and then final row, we've got 3 along there. Okay, so once you've got your tallies, it's quite easy to work out the frequency, and remember, frequency just means how many. Okay, so how many are there? So you've got 5, 10, 15, 18. Okay, now for the rest now, adventure, I'm going to fill in, because I did this earlier, okay, but you do exactly the same then with adventure. When I did this earlier, I worked out there were 10 adventure. When I did science fiction, there were 9, okay, and then with the romantic, there was 13, okay. Good way to check if you've done this right is to add up the frequencies, add these up to see if it adds up to 50, which is what we want here, 50 people, and indeed it does when you check that, right? So the next thing then, we're going to now use this data to represent all these different categories on a bar chart, okay? So it says use a bar chart to represent this here, okay? So we've got quite a large sheet of square paper to put our bar on, right? And what we'll do on the bottom here is an axis to represent our different categories, okay? So we have our categories along here, so we'll call that type of film. Now it's important with categorical data, right? Data that we count, right? We just counted, didn't we, how many comedies are there, adventures and so on, that we have gaps between the bars, right? It's really important. So if we put for here, this can represent our comedy, okay? So we'll have a bar which is of width 2, and we'll leave a gap then. We'll maybe leave a gap of width 1, and then we'll start then our next bar for adventure. Leave a gap, and then our next bar, science fiction, so I'll just put SF there, and then we leave a gap, and then our next bar then, romantic, okay? Okay, so it's important we label our bars, and then we label our axes as well, type of film, okay, and gaps between the bars. Now for our vertical axes, okay, this is where we always put our frequency, okay, and good thing to do is just to check with your table to see what value we need to rise to. We need to get up to 18, don't we? That's the highest value. Now my reckoning from this is we can probably just go up in ones, okay, you know, so if I started 0 there, this would be 1, that would be 2, 3, and so on. Now, instead of writing all them out, I'm just going to go in 2s, okay? So each square represents a 1. So we've got 8, 10. Don't have to fill in all the scale in between marks. So I don't need to put the odd numbers in as well. As long as it's clear what your scale is and we're consistent. Okay, so there's my scale there. Now, comedy, of course, if you remember from the table, okay, was 18, frequency 18, so I'll get my bar to 18. You should, of course, use a pencil to draw any graph diagrams. Okay, I'm just using a pen here so it's clear to you in the video. This is my bar there for the comedy. Adventure then is 10. Science fiction is 9. Now, of course, 9 would be there, wouldn't it, in between 8 and 10. And to finish off then, romantic, 13. Okay, 13. So 13 is between 12 and 14, of course. You've got your bars. Now you can colour these bars in whichever colour choice you want. Okay, but we've got there, we can see there quite clearly our bar chart where the axes are labelled. Okay, it's important you label them, frequency there. Scale is consistent. Okay, you're going up here, each square represents 1. Your bars then the same width. Okay, and gaps between the bars, really important you label each bar.